pulse of the background screening industry. Brought to you by IQubed Advisors.
Okay, I want to officially welcome everybody. Another welcome to another wonderful iCubes webinar. If you don't know why I am here, it's a good question, neither do I, but frankly, I love to be on camera. So here I am, pry the mic away from me, which these boys will be doing in the next 5 minutes. In all seriousness, I'm Bianca Lager, and I work with IQubed Advisors as a sales and marketing consultant. So essentially, I help sales and marketing leaders scale their revenue growth opportunities and systems so that our businesses grow the way we all want them to do. Now, these gentlemen here today have really put together something very special for you. And when I say that, I have now been hanging out with these guys for about 2 years now. And this is one of the most in-demand topics that we have seen. It is one of the most popular things, the questions we get asked about a lot. Obviously, a topic on all of our minds, AI. And now what these guys are going to deliver for you today isn't just more chatter that you hear about there, but of course, as iCubed is a boutique advisory for the background screening world, this is about background screening companies, right? This is about all aspects of the business. But most importantly, what I love about what they put together today is that it's very practical. So you're going to be able to walk out of here and use things that you're going to learn here immediately. Yes, it will be recorded. Yes, we will be sending out that recording. So no worries, as long as you're registered, you will have the opportunity to watch it at your leisure. And last housekeeping item, you guys are professionals. We all know what we're doing here in webinars. There's a chat. It is usually pretty active chat, so we appreciate all your guys' interaction in chat. It's already popping off over there, so let us know your thoughts, let us know your feedbacks. If you do have a particular question that you want answered in the Q&A towards the end of the webinar, pop it in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring those things, and I'll probably cut these guys off about 10 to the hour so that we can get those things addressed. And now I'm out of here. Kevin Bachman, do what you do.
10 minutes to which hour, Bianca? Because
Any
we can
hour
do
you
this
choose.
for about 3 hours.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
we
Any
talked
hour
to this
you
about
choose.
yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I share Bianca's enthusiasm and welcome. I always like to say at the beginning of our webinars or PBSA presentation, you have a lot of different choices, places to be. Everybody's busy. You chose to be here, listening to us, learning from us. And we take a lot of pride in that and strive to give you the best content we can while you guys are with us. For new listeners, you see on the screen who we are. Old listeners, welcome back. Thank you. A few of the things I'm most excited to talk about today with this group are how the AI solutions can help you create defensible screening solutions, expert witnesses, prevent litigation, et cetera, but also business advisory. Some of the things we'll talk about today are not just for operational background check solutions. It's how can you run your business better? So there's some things that we'll talk about today that whether you're in the toilet paper business or the background check business, there are opportunities to really run your business better, make more money, increase margin. So I'm excited to do that. Nick, take us away.
Yeah, thanks for having us today, and thanks for making us a part of your day. Let's start really quickly. I do want to talk about Tandem and what they do, but before that, I know probably everybody on here knows Kevin and I. Bill and Justin, would you guys mind introducing yourselves and just giving a very brief history about what you've done in the industry?
Hey, Bill, why don't you go first? Because you'll time box me very well. It depends.
That's your way of saying I talk too much. That's what I understand.
Maybe.
Hey, everybody. So glad to have you here. My name is Bill Wilder. My time in the industry, let's see, I've been in the industry about 15 years. I ran ops for Verifications, Inc., for those of you old enough to remember that company. Then First Advantage, ran ops there, and then took over at SJV and ultimately what became Informed Data. So my background from the industry perspective is very much on the operations side of the house. And about 3-4 years ago, I fell in love with artificial intelligence, and at nearly 60 years old, decided to go back and get a master's in it at Georgia Tech. So I've been spending my last 3 years, honestly, I've been so immersed in it. And then starting in January, left to go start our own little gig that we'll tell you about.
Cool. Thanks, Bill.
That's well done. That was only 2 minutes and 28 seconds.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nice. Record time.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah. Let's see if I can make it shorter. So my time goes a little bit further back than Bill's does within our industry. I've been in the industry since pre 9/11, honestly, and so got been able to witness the transformation of what our industry looked like from the very beginning, from heat transfer paper and operationally and business development and all the different things. Worked for a number of different firms, including some of the largest and a couple startups along the way. Did everything, as I mentioned, from operations to business development to product management to, in my last role, actually building from the ground up a brand new background screening company for a large payroll and ATS provider. And that was the impetus for me, honestly, in recognizing all of the different processes along the way that we had to go through, and said, man, there's just got to be a better way longer term. And so that really is what ignited my interest, kind of like along with Bill, that there's a better way, that there's ways that we can do these things way more efficiently. And so that's in my departure as well earlier this year. That's how I got connected with Bill, and we'll get into a little bit more of that as we move forward.
Yeah. So, Bill, would you mind giving a brief introduction of Tandem AI, what you guys do, and
Sure.
how people might be able to utilize your services?
Yeah, so Tandem AI is a new startup. We actually will be launching at the PBS show. Can't wait to see everybody there. What do we do? Probably the easiest way to describe it, and Justin, keep me honest, imagine Apple's store for AI agents. Imagine being able to go into a platform, look at hundreds of possible agents, pick the ones that make sense to your business and plug them in. And we'll explain a little more about what that means. But then we also do custom AI development for folks who, they have some task or some capability that they need to, they want to use AI for. We then go build that and host it for them. So that's basically what it is in a nutshell. But I think the metaphor of AI like in an Apple store where you can just come and pick and choose what you need and plug it into your organization is probably the best way to think about it.
Great. Thanks, Bill. So a couple of things as we get started here. Number one, I want everybody on the in the audience to know that the entire presentation that you see in front of you was actually developed using AI, not just ChatGPT, but using AI-based programs. Gamma is something that both Bill and Justin taught me how to use. So I wanted you to know that ahead of time. Of course, myself, Kevin, Bill, and Justin are all real, as far as you know. But the presentation has been developed that way. The other thing that I wanted to say before we get started is there's no way that I can kind of underplay or downplay how excited I am about today's topic. For a long time, anybody that has been paying attention to our webinars or other webinars that I've been on, I've been challenging those in the background screening industry to find the next big thing. What's the next big thing going to be, and how do people transform their businesses as a result of it? Now, honestly, when I would make statements like that, I wasn't really sure it would be on the operational side of things. I actually thought it might be in new products or new markets. But I am more convinced now than I ever have been that AI is the game changer. And I think that the timing of this presentation is incredibly good as well, leading into PBSA. You will notice, anybody that is going there, that a lot of topics center around AI. The reason we wanted Bill and Justin to be the ones that were presenting this is my respect and belief that not only do these guys know AI very, very well, they know our industry very well. And I think that what we talk about and their ability to deliver on AI is second to none. So that being said, no more sales pitches or anything like that, but I do believe that this is a great topic. So let's jump in. Justin, why don't you lead us off and talk to us a little bit about how AI can be used inside of CRA workflows.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I should have said this earlier. It is a privilege to be here. We appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day. Yeah, where and how and why and where, what does this even look like? I think you'll see it at the top of the slide there. Imagination is truly the limiting factor. I think that's one of the key themes that runs through it all. I think there's a lot of times that we get into processes or we get in just to the flow of the day, and we don't dig where we could dig. That was, I mentioned a little bit earlier, my experience in all of my experience throughout the industry, and in particular my last role, was identifying, flying into courts and doing court research and having to do the configuration and coding and setup and the credentialing and marketing and go-to-market plans, all those different things. You kind of see those around the graphic here. If I had the tools at my disposal then that I know are available to me today, that likely would have looked very different. The go-to-market would have looked different. The speed, the efficiency, all those things would have looked very different. And one of the things, at least that has been revealed to me really over the last, let's call it 6 to 9 months, most of what you're looking for from AI is no different than what we're looking for from an employee. But there are some differences, maybe some advantages, though, with AI as well. There's no personnel issues. There's no turnover. There's no cost to source, recruit, and onboard them. AI never gets tired. It's always ready to work. Those are all some advantages in there. They are going to be, the employees of the future. It doesn't mean that you are not going to have a human in the loop. It's very important to make sure, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, that oversight, keeping a human in the loop. But if you take that into like practical application, let's talk about a couple of these that you see on here. Marketing and positioning. What if you had the ability to tell an AI agent, I want to know what's going on in the market or what we're seeing on these 5 topics. And I want you to go out and find all that information. I want you to bring it in. I want you to evaluate it. I want you to score it. I want you to put it in a place that formats it, puts it nice and pretty in the format that I want it, that I want to be able to deliver either via social media or via email, or it's a newsletter that I post on my site. And oh, by the way, it's going to do all that, and then it's going to present it to you and you can approve it. Again, human in the loop. Can you imagine the activity that could help drive for your organization? How can that actually drive your sales funnel potentially, or even just your communication on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis with your clients? Think about KYC, know your customer, know your partners or your business, the credentialing process. Imagine if you had a couple of different AI employees, AI agents out there going and pulling Secretary of State and doing the Google research and finding pin drops and satellite images and street views and websites, and taking a look at key personnel, business verifications, phone number validation, and then pulling all that back into a package that then can be put into a report that your team can look at and say, is this client or this partner approved for us to do business with? If that could all be done in a matter of minutes versus taking a half an hour, can you then deploy those resources internally to do something that's creating value for your clients, as opposed to having them do credentialing services?
Yeah, and think about what you just did, by the way, when you talk about that. Not only is that an advantage for KYC in getting a customer set up, but the bad old days of a customer having to wait 7 days to be set up in a system now can be shortened. So you're also improving your client experience at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you mind talking a little bit more about client experience too? Because I think it's like one of the first things people will think about when they talk about using AI.
Yeah. So the client experience, some of that is, we're going to talk a little bit later about what does the next, year look like, right? Within AI, and how's it going to impact the industry? Some of this is in existence today, and Bill, I'm sure you'll want to chime in here.
Yeah.
But that, how your client, if you are improving from an efficiency and a speed and an accuracy and quality standpoint, we have examples already of test cases that have been done on the QA side of the house. AI, again, is not perfect at everything, but the rate at which it is more perfect than a human is pretty significant, right? So you can improve your quality aspect, and that all speaks to what that client experience is, right? And your client's client experience. Bill, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I just, when it comes to client experience, and I've done quite a number of these implementations now where people have tried to put AI talking to their customer, and that's like their very first entree into the world of AI. What I've learned from those experiences, first of all, most companies aren't really ready for that to be their first step, because to be successful, you've got to have very well documented policies and procedures, how you want the AI to handle things. And frankly, most companies don't do that. It lives in their customer service team members' heads, and they forget to document something. And there's, plenty of cases where, the AI answered the question wrong. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of lessons to learn, and I'm sure Justin, can tell you about some of the bruises he's observed and felt over the last 6 months learning it. You probably don't want to do that in front of your client. You probably want to have those bruises and bumps in a more hidden way. So what I recommend for people is start more on the back end of the business, or even start with internal communications, like stand up a knowledge bot, so that if someone has a question about how does this work, or where I do this, or whatever, they start asking that, and you'll find those fallacies in your policies and your procedures, and that will get you ready to put it in front of a client.
What I love most about what the two of you just shared there, first of all, it's very honest and authentic, right? You're like, hey, we're the AI experts. No, 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 no. Don't use it here, or don't do it first, right? But it's also a nice differentiator. And we mentioned the PBSA show coming up, the schedule. I sit on the peer review committee where we review and just make recommendations for presentations, and there were like 24 AI submissions. The things we're talking about here and some of the things, Justin, you ran through are, like I said at the beginning, just the nuts and bolts of running your business. Where I think a lot of us get stuck in the conversation is, the regulatory, the EEOC, the litigation, which we'll get to in a minute, but also like the operational specific background check things. And here we're talking about, again, like I said a second ago, just there are tools that will help you run your businesses better. In a few minutes, I'll speak a little about payroll, some savings, separating employee attitudes and feedback toward these solutions. But it's a nice holistic conversation that we're starting to have about where, when, how these things can help your business, and what to avoid, at least in the interim, as we all get geared up and skilled up to this new solution.
Guys,
Yeah, I think
I've got a couple. Oh, I'm sorry, Justin. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, no, I think that for me, the thing of note here is it's really our focus is to free up your teams to focus on the 20% of activities that are driving the value and need their real attention, right? It's you're not trying to solve for everything. I mean, that would be great. That would be ideal. But the reality is you want to free up so that they can focus on the 20% that needs their attention.
Yeah, generally speaking, if you traverse a company, pick any company in any industry, and you go walk around and you talk to the team members of the company, the way this is a good target for AI is when someone describes whatever they're doing as irritating.
Yeah.
If whatever they're doing is irritating, generally speaking, it's a really good target. I give you a perfect example of my last employer. Every quarter we had to go through this process where we had to go through our payroll records to submit to the state. We had to look for compliance violations, people taking their breaks on time or whatever. It took 16 hours every quarter to go through all that crap, right? We spent a day with the HR team. We built an AI agent, and now that's a 6-minute process. And that's exactly how that HR employee would have described this activity once a quarter. Is irritating as can be. And so I just say, people who don't go out and try to cure cancer with this right now. That's not what we do. Go look in your organization for places where your return on investment of that person's time and skills and attention is not there. And they're describing their work as frustrating, irritating, waste of time. Those are all really good indicators of places to start your AI journey. You will grow into much more advanced uses, but start with the basics.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my mind's already running, Bill, on what that HR person and what the team could do with, 65 more hours a year, a training session, something that helps the business far more than what you just described.
Kevin, think about this thing that they have to do over and over. Well, an AI agent can do all 20 of those at the same time in parallel.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for them to be available to do the next one. It's just going to do them all at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, another great example, Kevin. We not to tell too much about my last employer, but we were it was just inundating the number of emails that had to go back and forth between the operational teams and the customer service teams. And many people on this call, probably had some impacts as a result. And we tracked it, measured it. It was roughly 3,000 emails a day were going back and forth between these parties, most of which the questions could be handled by AI. So if you're looking for a great place to start, that's a great place to start.
Love it.
Also, I'm just going to pipe in here that I've been paying attention to the chat. We anticipated this question. We are not ignoring compliance. Compliance is a slide all unto itself. And
Correct.
we will definitely address that as we go through. So I promise you that that's coming up shortly. Hey, Bill, one fundamental question really quickly before we move on is that I think people in the audience, or at least let's just call it me, tends to associate AI with ChatGPT. And that's not necessary. That is a form of AI, but it's only one very small area. You guys talk a lot about agentic AI. Can you talk about what that is and what the
Sure.
difference is between that and a ChatGPT?
Sure. Yeah. So I love to use this in presentations I give. I can go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm going to go on a vacation to Miami. How about give me an itinerary? And ChatGPT will kick out a beautiful itinerary. That's what just basic LLMs do. What an AI agent does, though, is it's empowered with do things. And so I can actually say, okay, that's great. Now go ahead and book my hotel, book my airline, call these places, check and see if they have availability. Can I get the reservation? Buy me the tickets, whatever. LLMs can just simply respond. AI agents is when you actually bolt on tools that can do things. They can actually take action on your behalf as opposed to just simply give you a worded response. Does that
Right.
help? Does that resonate?
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental thing for people to understand that it's different than just typing in, hey, for instance, I'm going to admit to something here. You guys are going to love this. A couple of years ago, Jason Morris for Morris, asked me to write a recommendation for him for PBSA. I think it was like Person of the Year or something like that. And I went to ChatGPT and I wrote the greatest uh, uh, submission for him to the point where he told me that it moved him to tears, only to find out that I had done it on ChatGPT. Just a personal story, but wanted to everybody to understand difference between ChatGPT and the type of AI that we're
That's an
talking.
awesome example because he asked me to do the same thing, which is probably why he didn't win that year, that he asked both of us. But I slaved over what I did. It just because it took longer and it was original and yeah. Next time your idea is a better one.
Okay, so moving on. This is a really important point that I think all of us on this call wanted to get across, and that it is that AI is not a fad.
Yeah.
We've talked about a lot of things that we thought were going to be big in our industry, and maybe we were right, maybe we were wrong, maybe they will be someday. Some never will. AI is not going away, and it is imperative that CRAs start to adopt it early on. It is the great equalizer. And so, Bill, can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, if you're a small CRA and you're trying to compete against, my alma mater, First Advantage, or other big guys, I mean, they're always going to have an advantage on you. They can provide 24/7 coverage and work around the clock, and they can scale, indefinitely. They just have all these benefits that come with being large. And when you're small, it's very difficult. If you can only afford one customer service agent or one processor operator or whatever, you can't have them work 24/7. And so what AI does is it basically allows you to create armies of people and frankly pennies on the dollar of what you would pay a human to do the same task for. And so now suddenly, you're up against somebody and to win some business, you can be more competitive on your pricing. You can project yourself with more scale. Your quality will be there, your metrics can be there, your application can be as good as theirs. I mean, AI really does allow the small guy to compete on par with the big guy in many ways. And so I don't know if that totally answers your question. For me, this is fundamentally more like the introduction of the internet or the introduction of the cell phone and how it's going to impact the industry as opposed to blockchain. I mean, blockchain was a solution looking for a problem. Here we have a just a whole new way of doing business.
Here on blockchain, for sure, Bill. And what I love on you tying that to kind of the financial piece of the business, and I kind of think to myself, all right, what are the biggest challenges for people just getting started with AI? Is it getting off the starting block? Is it doesn't have the utility I thought it was? Is it internal pushback? And I'd love thoughts on that over the next half hour or so, because I think there's truth in all of that. But what you just did is you kind of tied that to a narrative that I think lives within a lot of the CRAs under $10 million, which is, hey, how do I compete? Where are my opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And there's some real payroll and cost savings here. I'm not advocating firing all of your people, but I am advocating looking for ways to compete better with companies that have bigger sales megaphones or stronger marketing muscles. And this is one of those opportunities that can really help you in our space.
Well, I mean, if you don't want to use that language, use the scale language, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure several of you in here at some point or another have been on the precipice of winning some big, huge client, and now you're going through the mental gymnastics of how am I going to add all these people? How am I going to be able to deal with the rising queues and all this other stuff? And then now fast forward into a world of AI where, hey, you need to double the number of phone calls that you can take. You just stand up more AI agents, right?
Yeah.
You just replicate them.
And it's so much more, and it's so much more predictable. Oh, I hired
Right.
Joni and Johnny to help with this new client. Crap, Joni took another job, and oh man, Johnny's not as good. And 2 months passed, and you're still worried about the onboarding. How do I support? You don't have that human element with some of the solutions we're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so
and
it is here to stay for sure.
And that leads into a good question. Like, people have gotten anxious about what does this mean about the future of employment, particularly in this industry. What I would say is, I think that it helps in the areas that we all struggle with. And I'll kick that off to either Justin or Bill. This is not going to eliminate all jobs inside of background screening, but it will help.
Well, so AI requires, I'm going to use the word domain knowledge. Let me explain that because I've been told not everybody understands what I mean by that. So in this case, we're talking about background screening. So background screening is the domain. Within that, some people know CRIM, some people know drug testing, whatever. So when I say the word domain, that's what I'm talking about. AI without domain oversight and domain involvement, people who know that stuff, is very dangerous. And so you're never going to go, let me just create a complete AI company and I'll walk away and go fishing and we'll see how that works out for me. That's not how that works. You're going to create these AI capabilities, but you need domain expertise to watch over it, deal with it when it gets off track, et cetera. So that part, there will always be the need for that domain expertise. The second piece I will say, and I happen to be working at Best Buy at a time when the internet retail was born. And I remember the messages of, retail is going to go away, Best Buy is going to die, blah, blah, blah. It's been a minute, but last time I looked, they were still doing pretty doggone well. But what's happened is we, people learn new jobs and new ways of fulfilling their life. And so I don't think at the end of the day, it may change the jobs in the world. I don't think it's going to ultimately, net down.
Yeah, and I think, to add to that, there are some aspects of, you think even about the legal profession, right? There are some AI tools out there for the legal profession, and others for that matter. What doesn't go away is the need for relationship. What doesn't go away is the need to actually have a conversation with someone. AI is good at certain things today, and it will get better at other things as we go into the future. But it also can't recognize context very well a lot of times.
Right.
It can't express empathy, understand. Let's say you have somebody who hasn't been at work for the last 2 days and you can't really figure out why. They've always been that spectacular employee. Well, AI may be able to report out to you that this thing is happening, but they can't tell you that that person's wife was just diagnosed with cancer and they're trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to navigate that in their life and work and all those things, right? So those types of things are the things that AI is, it's not going to solve for those things, at least not in the near future in any way. So,
But it can create the space to do those things better. And that's what's
yes,
really
That's correct.
interesting to me.
correct.
You know,
Correct.
I think of it from the macro employment question or the large employment question. I think about it at a macro and a micro. On a macro level, large companies, what does it do to fulfillment centers, primarily overseas, et cetera? But I also think about it from the smaller companies with 12 people, you know, one person, two people. That's 150 grand to the bottom line. Our internal research at IQubed Advisors has shown, and I've said this a number of times, about a 15 to 20% drop in employment in our space in the last 4 years. I don't think that number is ever getting higher. Like, I don't think we're ever going to have more than 20,000 people working in the screening industry. That's where we're at right now. So from both a, hey, let's level our skill set up, people, to make sure that that we're on board with this, but also as business owners, hey, you know, where are the real opportunities to make money in your business? And to your point, Bill, yeah, this ain't going away. So it really is adapt or die.
And Kevin, I love using this because most people think of AI as relatively new, right? For most people, it's like, oh, this just came about. The reality is AI has been around a really, really long time. It's got a better publicist these days. If you actually go back, a trivia question for your next cocktail party for folks out there. Question is, what was the first commercial application of what we call AI today? And the answer to that is those barcode scanners at the grocery stores. The fundamental math that goes into making those barcode scanners work when you check out is the same that is working inside a lot of the AI tools today. So AI has been in and around us in this industry for a really, really long time. And I can tell you, underneath the hood of a lot of the automation libraries that run today, there is AI today and has been in place for several years. We used to call it machine learning. You might have heard that term. That's been around a long time. AI's been around a long time, but I think people think it's new and somehow it's scary, but you've lived amongst it for so long.
No. Bill, I also want to go back to a key point you were making when you talked about domain expertise, because let's dispel some rumors on the call. AI is not necessarily an IT and engineering project. They're necessary
Definitely
to
not.
the equation, but it's really your operators that need to help them get there. Would you agree with that statement?
Completely agree with that statement. The key players, and this is why I fell in love with it 3-4 years ago, is because when I actually saw that it has now evolved with tools, low code, no code tools, it has evolved into things that guys like me can actually understand who didn't need to go to school for 4 years for software engineering. Once I see that driver cockpit had been built and I could drive AI as well as anybody else, it really lit a fire in me because I could truly see, and now I could see where all that Six Sigma training and all of that process engineering, stuff that I did for so long, I could see it coming alive. So the reality is the best driver of the AI car, frankly, is going to be the person within the domain that knows how the processes operate. So if you're talking finance, someone in the finance department. If you're talking HR, someone in HR. So really marrying up someone who knows AI with someone who knows domain, you're going to get the optimum outcome.
Yeah. So that gets us to today. Now let's talk a little bit about the next 12 months. Normally we talk a lot further out, but this is happening so fast. So what are you guys seeing?
Well, Justin, why don't you take a crack? Because I've been talking a lot.
Well, I felt like I did earlier as well. So you're not alone. To be honest with you, I don't know that we can definitively say what it's going to look like in 12 months because the rate that AI is progressing. I can't remember what the statistic used to be for, data and technology used to double at a rate.
Moore's Law.
Yeah. Moore's Law.
But they're saying today that AI is doubling at a rate of somewhere between every 6 and 7 months, the capability.
Correct.
So if you think where we are today, 12 months from now, we're going to be twice as far ahead and the capability of what AI can do today. And so everybody knows, AI currently, there's the ability for the chatbots, and we've got out there the inbound and outbound calling type things that can work with AI, and it can handle those things. But when we say that your imagination truly is the only limiting factor, we really mean that, because 12 months from now, what that can look like could be very, very different from where we are today. And we're going to get to this in a little bit, but if you think about data extraction and fraud detection with it, I mean, we all know that there's fraudulent resumes and all that kind of stuff out there. Well, an AI agent can sit in the background and just, at this point, very soon, it's going to be able to tell you when somebody was lying, or that piece of paper that they handed you was a fraudulent piece of paper. And you're not going to have to send that off to anybody for them to actually review and look at. AI is probably going to be able to tell you that in a very short amount of, you can probably take a picture of it and let it scan it, and it's going to tell you that no, that's not a real document. Right.
Yeah.
So really, it's going to be light years. I hate to use that, but I'm a Star Wars fan, so it's going to be light
Bill,
years.
I'm going to pin you down a little bit more and ask for some more
That's okay.
tangible. Like Justin, you got there at the end, and I appreciate that. But Bill, give us a
Yeah.
little.
Well,
Employee training comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Yeah. Employee training. I mean, look, the harsh feedback for our industry is that we are in the dust trail of AI technology, and we're so far behind. If we ran full speed for the next 12 months, we still wouldn't catch the cutting edge. So this, for the background screening specifically, worried about, the next evolution of the next model is not overly relevant. What the next 12 months in this industry looks like is massive, massive adoption.
Yeah.
Look, there's voice-based AI available today to make verification calls for CRAs, so they don't have to have humans doing it. There is plenty of what would they call anomaly detection AI that not only we offer, but other people offer, that can find issues in your delays in your orders or whatever, that can proactively communicate with clients, hey, this is behind. So the technological underpinning required for the background screening already is existent and is already being used in other industries. So if you ask me specifically, what does 12 months in background screening look like? It looks like a huge catch-up exercise. And what I would say right now is, for CRAs, for probably the next 2, 3, 4 months, it's a chance to get ahead. But I think once we get into January, February, you're going to need to be running as fast as you can just to keep up. I am aware of the big guys are all making massive, significant investments, and they are the ones who are going to drive this industry, and they're going to drive potentially prices down. They're probably going to drive turnaround times down. And so if you're going to compete to the 98% of all background checks finished in under an hour, or whatever the new slogan the marketers are going to come up with, you're going to have to be in the AI space to have a chance to run with those dogs.
And Bill, one of the things we talked a little bit about yesterday, you mentioned it just now, estimated time to completions, updates, communicating with clients, the internal communications required between a public records department and a client support document or department. When is Cook County going to be back? What's going on with LA, et cetera? Using some of these solutions to just refine, make it more predictable, and quite frankly, better, is a real game changer for me. I used to spend $150,000 in labor annually just for updates and status checks. And
well, here's the beauty of how this particular AI industry has evolved. It's evolved down this business model of transactional consumption. I don't know if this is where you guys want to talk, but this is very important for the small guys on the call, because typically, if you want to go into a new technology, it's going to be a very large capital investment for you to go do that. But there are so many folks like us who are going to offer to just buy it per transaction. Here's the available AI tool. You can just buy it, 15 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents at a time, as opposed to buying, spending $500,000 to build your own AI. And so I think it makes it way more reachable, I guess is the right word, for the small guy.
I agree.
Okay. And in the interest of time, I know we could talk about all these topics for a long time. I want to make sure we leave enough time for Q&A. I know legal and compliance guardrails are a big deal. We're not necessarily going to give anybody legal advice today, but we do want to make sure that those on the call are also developing AI with an eye on compliance and ensuring that we continue to do things the right way. So I don't know, Bill or Justin, you guys want to jump in on that?
I think
Well,
I was afraid Bill was going to make me talk first on that one.
no, I'll talk first. Look, there is no doubt. You need to be leery of getting too close to the hiring or the housing decision, right? Stay away. You look, even if it works perfectly, there is still skepticism. The example I give, Kevin and I were talking about this yesterday, right? The driverless cars, right? They go out, self-driving car gets in one accident, the world goes nuts. Meanwhile, humans crash 10,000 cars in that same period of time, and no one cares. So there is an expectation there can't be any mistakes. And so what I would tell folks is there's enough murkiness in the world of AI. I wouldn't start with applying adverse action tables, making decisions, and things like that. But if I'm going to use AI to just make sure my vendor invoice is right, sure, what's the harm in that? There's no FCRA implications there. There's no FCRA implications even if I'm looking at the orders going through the door and suddenly I see something coded as a felony that had a 90-day jail sentence on it. Well, that don't make no freaking sense. AI could pick that out, that needle out of the proverbial haystack, flag the order, and stop it from shipping to the client. So I think it's a judicious thought process that says, how close am I to a decision that can affect the hiring or the housing of an individual? And if I'm far enough away, I think AI is appropriate.
Nick, this is
Remember, we're not advocating here for AI to take over everything. There are still human beings that need to ensure that it's running the way that it's running.
Nick.
Well,
True statement. We did a process. At an organization where it was a pretty important process, and the AI had a 7% error, or sorry, had a 5% error rate. And management of that company were like, "Oh my God, that's horrible," blah blah blah. And we're like, "Well, you're asking the wrong question." And they're like, "Well, what's the right question? How many errors did the humans make?" Well, the humans made 7% errors.
Yeah.
So, okay, but in this day and age, again, I've spent enough time with the Lynn Bennett's of the world. That's one of the plaintiffs bar that loves to sue background screening companies. I spend enough time with those guys. I'm just going to tell you, you want to be smart, start in the back office, start with simple tasks. Let the world catch up with AI, both legally, regulatorily, people's paradigms, and then just sort of govern your movement based on that.
Sorry, I was just going to add one. Your process exists today for evaluating how you partner with technology partners and deploying technology for most of us, right? If you don't, by the way, that's probably a different conversation that we need to have if you don't have a process around it. But hopefully you do. That doesn't change with this, right? From a compliance perspective, that still you still have to deploy that process. You still have to go through those steps, and we'll talk in a little bit more detail about that here in just a second. So
I have I'm pretty passionate about this one slide. And, if anybody's listening to this on the Background Check Radio podcast, when we dump it on there, you can't see my body language. But right now, I'm shrugging my shoulders with my hands in the air. And I'm like, legal compliance guardrails. I don't know. Not that they aren't there, not that they're not important, not that we shouldn't consider them. But, my message to the audience is there's not going to be a law, a regulation, a court case. So the EEOC doesn't even have quorum right now, and they haven't since January when the president fired 2 people on the commission. Nobody's coming to save you to say, this is okay, this might be okay, this isn't okay. Have the communications and the conversations internally, engage with your counsel, but the lack of clarity around an absolute yes and absolute no shouldn't be a barrier to people jumping in and exploring some of these solutions to help their business. No one's coming to save you. You're not going to get that clarity. You need to take this upon yourself, look at these things and make the best decision for you. You have to make the decision. Nobody's going to give it to you.
If we look over at the medical community, I did a speech last year on AI at a conference, and the tone and tenor at that meeting was, no AI can't be done, blah 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 blah. It was very much anti-AI. You go back to that exact same conference this year, and there's all this AI implementation, and all this is happening. And so, I think
By the way, not too dissimilar from the background screening industry, because I think if you would have asked that same question a year or two ago, you would have gotten the same response.
Yeah. I've been in
I
the
just
industry
got back
long
from
enough.
HR Tech, and it
Yeah.
was, I think every booth
Yeah.
had an
Yeah.
AI emblem
Yeah.
on it. Every
There's
single
too
one.
much money. There's too much money to be made in this. There's too much money to be made, saved, and the
Yeah.
quality of the solutions
Exactly.
are too
Too
good
much
for people
efficiency
to
to be
ignore
gained.
it forever.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. I again know that this is a much bigger topic, and we will try to dedicate airtime to this in the future. But before we go to Q&A, I just want to talk about some real world advice for how people can get started.
Yeah.
And we also want to talk about the difference between, buying AI uh, operational processes versus building them on your own.
Yeah, so I'll start here, Bill, and feel free to chime in. I think the main, there's a couple things to ask yourself. The first is, a lot of people are asking, should we explore and adopt this? I don't think that's the right question. I think it's how and where you adopt it at this point. Go back to Bill's statements about his much more pointed statements about what's coming in the next 12 months. And there's probably even more than that with AI, computer use AI, and voice AI, and all these other things that are likely coming. But the real question is to be mindful and don't just adopt it blindly. You've got to ask, what problems are we trying to solve? Do we have our processes documented? Start there. Look on the back end first, as we've been talking through this whole thing. Find those micro tasks, those things that are just consuming labor and time, that are repetitive, that, okay, maybe AI can step in there and do that. The buy versus build, I think we did talk about that a little bit earlier, with, depending on the resources. Do we have 500,000 or $1 million sitting in a piggy bank somewhere to take the time and the resources to develop that? Or are there more cost-effective ways for us to approach that? But the first step in that is identify those processes, dig in with your teams. And if you haven't, what's the disadvantage to actually looking at your internal processes within your organization? You define your processes, you find the spots where there is automation, where there's not, where AI may apply, where it may not. Then you got to, just like every other thing, you got to pilot it and test it. You got to go through the same type of vendor selection and partner selection process to vet people and ensure that there's transparency, the security, the compliance, all those things are in place. And we've talked about this a lot. You'll see step 4 there is govern. I like to refer to that as the oversight or the human in the loop. You have to keep the human in the loop at all times. That's not going away. The goal here is not necessarily to remove people, but to free up time to focus on that 20% where they're either creating value or focusing on the things that are going to matter to you and to your clients. And then you got to look at the ROI, right? You got to continue to measure. You've got to continue to have oversight over time. So,
And I think that's an excellent tie-in. It's not one or the other. It's really both.
it is.
I do think it will reduce headcount in the macro over time, but I think it's a positive because other things will be done better as a result of these solutions. And from a compliance standpoint, litigation, we do expert witness work. Boy, I think it's a really strong argument to be able to communicate that organizations are looking for the best solutions and they are trying to blend the human and the technology rather than just a reflexive absolute yes or absolute no. It is that blend that I think really enhances compliance and, certainly would make an expert witness report that I write easier, because really trying to keep up with industry standards, really trying to keep up with best practices, looking for ways to be more accurate and compliant. And I think this conversation lends itself to organizations doing that in a good way.
Okay. All right. So let that be the final word. Why don't we move over to questions? Bianca, what have you got for us?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I've been chomping at the bits, guys. And thank you everybody for being just turn my light on over here, don't mind me. For being so participative. Is that a word? No.
Wow, it is now.
It is now.
Engaged.
I always like to coin at least one. Thank you for participating so well in the chat and the Q&A. Guys, I want to get some really strong practical tips here. Everything's been so great. And so there's so many questions I'm not going to get to. If it's okay, if you guys don't mind staying a couple extra minutes to try to capture and record as many of these answers as possible. And if you, the audience, are here too, please do stick with us. So here we go. What tools could be used for the client vendor credentialing specifically?
So which aspect of credentialing, like are we talking about like the Secretary of State type lookups? Are we talking about testing the actual product flow? I'm not real sure.
Pick one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are a number of AI agents, including some we offer, Bianca, that can do all the administrative vetting. They have their rankings, they're the Secretary of State, are they legal? In terms of the testing, it would be fairly easy to construct a what's called a chaining model. It's a type of AI that could take in the results of a known order against test cases, seed test cases, and could at scale, like thousands of orders, test them to make sure that they're hitting all their quality dimensions. And the beauty is, like, when you typically do vendor testing, generally you have like one test case that's going to test like warrants and another test case that's going to test some other dimension. The beauty with AI is you can run it through hundreds, and you can put the vendor on probation for some period of time, or put them under vetting entirely, and the AI will flag when something isn't right. And so at the end of the day, I don't know, when you say tool, it's going to be the AI itself, and you're ultimately going to use a combination of models with code or low code, no code tools. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it for vendor setup, because what
Yeah.
it does is it makes smaller users more profitable.
The other thing in setup too, Kevin, and I don't know if we've talked about it, there's this whole space. They used to call it RPA. Some people are now calling it computer use. I like to call it emulation. But anything a human does to a website, like they click on this link, they go here, they enter this information, they hit this button, and they go somewhere else. There are whole AI packages that do that, and you write what they're supposed to do, like you would write an SOP document, and it will follow the SOP.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, I wanted to what you addressed on the credentialing. Let's just call it client credentialing, right?
Yes.
Or vendor credentialing. I had a conversation with someone last week who is likely going to go through some acquisition stuff, and so they're planning on picking up, somewhere between like 500 accounts or something like that. Well, they need to quickly be able to credential all of these, right?
Right.
If you go back to Bill's conversation about a package that might have the Secretary of State and phone number validation and website validation and key personnel, and that's all, you can have AI sitting in the background probably process all 500 of those the same day.
Minutes. Yeah, minutes.
Yeah. And you and I both sit on the BSCC. Like, we know the accreditation standards for client vetting and credentialing. Like, they're no joke.
Yeah.
For good reason. But yeah.
And just
that's another food for thought, Kevin. I wonder at what point are you going to have to adapt the BSCC to account for the use of AI in the process?
Kevin doesn't even know that I'm not there. It's just an AI that I see.
Yeah, right. There you go.
It will. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they raise the standards. Fish, you raise an interesting comment, because if it
I mean it in a positive way, meaning like not defensible, but like you should be doing this.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think that highlights a really good point. Justin, you laid out that kind of how to build a kind of AI roadmap and identifying those bottlenecks. What do you guys see in your guys' works that are kind of the most common bottlenecks? A really good kind of entry place to start, or like, really specifically, what are you seeing as like these very obvious places? And you spoke about it a little bit, but if you can give like a kind of concise 1, 2, 3, like look here, look here, look here, I think that would be really helpful for everyone.
Justin, it's got to be all the data cleansing stuff that people ask us about.
Yeah, we've had a number of conversations of, it's the data cleansing and scrubbing. So think of SSN trace, address history, common names, that kind of stuff, as well as NatCrim type of database initial reporting out. How do we somehow marry those two together with a couple, to Bill's point earlier about AI agent chaining, where you've got different AIs doing different things, and they come back together and they create a confidence level of, oh yeah, those records likely belong to that person. Great, go order that for re-verification. Or the QA process. How many,
Yeah.
I mean, we all have QA processes in our businesses.
Yeah.
You've got a team of people sitting over there likely doing a final review. Well, what if you could actually have AI do an initial cursory evaluation of that, and then the QA team only actually has to look at a very small percentage of what they used to look at?
Mhm. Not for
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah, very familiar with that workflow.
Bianca,
I'll be honest. When we did it at Informed Data, Bianca, what we did was we took our payroll and we looked at where we spending our money. We found little pockets of high spending, and we said, what the heck do these people do? And then we got into what they did, and we went, oh, here's 4 or 5 tasks that we probably could pull out. In some cases, it wasn't like the entirety of the task, but like we had one lady whose whole job it was to look up Hawaii statutes and translate it into the text, because no one knew what the heck Hawaii statute numbers meant, right? Okay, that's a perfect target for AI.
Yeah, I love that example. And I love this example of also illustrating like that lady, right? Now we have the opportunity to maybe elevate her knowledge and job
Correct.
and have her
Yep.
do something that is
Yep.
even more, broadening her skill sets and whatever else. On that note, our dear friend Jason Morris, not sure if any of you guys know him here, added this question on the compliance side. Don't you think AI will raise the bar on what is considered industry standard? Meaning it catches errors better, it finds
do.
aliens to court records. So essentially, and there's another compliance question that's
yeah,
kind of
well,
the similar vein in terms of court case in regard to accuracy. Like there's this question here of like, isn't this actually going to make it better, right? Elevate that level of accuracy and things like that. What are your guys' thoughts there?
I will say yes. I think it is going to raise the bar, no doubt. And I think the consistency, right, again, done well with the proper guardrails, it's going to be very difficult for someone to say that AI did that thing differently, right? As long as it is doing it, that you've got those guardrails in there. I think that does go back to that transparency conversation a little bit from earlier, right? You are not going to be able to say, if you get, let's say somebody does try and challenge something that's reported and AI was involved in the process, you can't say, well, that's just what the algorithm gave us. That's not going to work, right? That's like saying a black box did this thing. That's not going to be defensible. But if you have transparency to exactly how that process works, what does that thing look like? How did the AI work through that? That's a very different conversation. So I think from a compliance perspective, it does go back. It's no different than today. Do you have everything documented? Are you not only do you have your processes documented, but are you following them? Well, guess what? AI has a real tough time not following what you tell it to do.
yeah, Bianca, there's a really good exchange going on in the chat. I'd like to grab the question
Yeah.
for anybody who listens to this on the podcast or sees a recording after the fact. And it's essentially a question around, hey, what happens if I don't do any of this? Great ideas, guys. Cool. I'm all set. I kind of compare it to where the space might have been about 10 years ago, where court search automation was running into, no pun intended, people that were like, nope, I'm going to run into the courthouse. I'm going to use runners. I'm never going to use computers. And, and I kind of think of over time, and Jason, our colleague, was participating in this conversation as well. And I kind of agree. I'm going to paraphrase and then expand. Over time, and that's kind of the operative phrase, over time, your payroll leak will be higher. I'm really passionate about where companies use their payroll dollars. Bill made a really good comment a minute ago. So over time, you're just going to spend more for things done manually. They're not going to be done as well. To the conversation around
Nor will they be
industry
done as
standards.
efficiently. Yeah, you're just going to lose
raising
a
the bar.
competitive edge.
Yeah, raising the bar, industry standards, you're going to be falling behind. So I kind of think it's just like a slow bleed. I think you're just going to bleed out if you're not embracing technology. It's going to be harder to defend in litigation. You're going to spend more money. Things are going to take longer, and you're just going to fall behind. The best way. And I wanted to bring that conversation in for anyone who's just getting the audio or watching the video afterward and isn't on your live.
Yeah, and thank you. And we're going to continue for a few more minutes. Obviously, everybody understands if you need to drop off. We have a few, and Nick, you were exchanging a little bit with Jennifer here in the chat, and I think it is a pretty pointed question for you all. And she says, we have clients who are extremely, it's a little bit about privacy, I guess, and AI. We have clients who are extremely dubious of sharing data with AI out of concern it will be used for the AI for other purposes. How would the panel respond to these clients?
Well, first of all, you need to understand a little bit about how LLM models are built. They are not dynamically learning, contrary to popular opinion. So when you are keying stuff into ChatGPT and you're telling it your most deepest, innermost secrets, it isn't learning and training the model. It is, I don't want to get into technicals. It goes away. It does disappear. In terms of would they ever turn it and train it towards future models, the reality is likely not. Now, that being said, I'm not a big fan of dumping in DOBs and socials into AI. I personally wouldn't do it. But here's the other beauty. If you're that concerned and you got to have a little bit of a deep pocketbook, you can easily, all of these companies, ChatGPT, Gemini, all of these guys, they offer self-hosted models. And you can absolutely procure their self-hosted model. So instead of hitting the one way out into the universe, you can hit your own version of it. And it won't get there. There are definitely strategies for handling that. I don't know, Bianca, I'm happy whoever's asking the question, if they want to have a more detailed technical conversation, I'm happy to have it, but trust me, there are solutions that 1000% assure your data does not make it out anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and I'll say that to everybody here in the audience, and there's actually a good chunk of very detailed technical questions that I've kind of skirted around here to some degree because again, like it could be a whole other webinar, but Bill, Justin, I'm sure everyone would love for your follow-up on that, to just get into the weeds here a little bit, because I think these questions are really important to understand the bigger picture, right? And see the forest from the trees. Because when we really do understand the technical setup of some of this stuff, I know Craig had a good question earlier. It really helps to put into context how this can fit into a system you might already be familiar with. Okay, well, I don't want to keep you guys too much longer, but I would love to ask for a final word from each of you just on this topic, and of course, where we can find you guys, where everybody can follow up if we didn't get the answers that they wanted today. Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and let Bill and Justin talk first, and then you can take us home. How about that?
Sounds great.
Sure. Well, yeah, thanks, Bill. Thank you, Bianca, Nick, Kevin. Appreciate the opportunity for us to be here. This is it. We are at a flashpoint, honestly, for us in our industry. And for someone who's spent over 25 years in our industry, I think it's important that we not put the blinders on, that we at least open our eyes up to the conversation. And one of the biggest challenges that I've seen in my experience has been the actual strategic approach or direction from senior leadership within organizations have sometimes been barriers. I'm going to encourage you, if that's who you are out there, if you are those senior leaders, get out of the way for just a little bit of time. Step out of the way, let your teams be really good at what you hired them to be really good at, and then listen to them, because we are going places. And we'll go there without you if you don't get on board. So I don't want to see that happen, though. I want to see our industry thrive. I want to see what we do be excellent. And this is likely the next level of excellence for all of us. So with that, I'll let Bill talk. I appreciate the time. This was, had a great time. This was exciting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for putting this on. Thanks for everyone who attended. My final message would be, if you're still in the mode of talking about it, I would tell you the time for talking while waiting is probably over. I would tell you to go ahead and at least get started in a very small scale, in a very safe way, but get started now, because right now you're just speculating on what it might be. You really need to start experiencing it. We don't sit around and talk about spreadsheets. We get in there and do it and we figure it out. So I would say same thing here. So start small, start now. And if we can help, certainly let Justin and I know.
Nick, final words?
Oh, wow. I get to go before Kevin.
You're allowed.
I mean, I would just echo everything that Justin and Bill are saying. This now is not a time for inaction. I agree with anybody that says that they're skeptical of this. That's great. You should be, but that shouldn't get in the way of you figuring out how to use this. What I would say is, like, just piggybacking off of Justin's idea, is go experiment, go figure it out. bring your level of skepticism to the table so that you can shoot holes in it to make it better.
Yeah.
But don't look for reasons not to do this. Look for reasons to do this and to figure it out. And you don't need to boil the ocean in one day. Start in one place, make it work well, and then move on to the next area. And again, only you can decide where your business is struggling most or where it can be helped the most. And so there's no roadmap for do this and then do this. You just do what you prioritize based on your unique circumstances.
These are great thoughts, guys. There's a truism in webinars, and it's, death, taxes, and 58% of all the people who sign up will log on and watch the webinar. And I said yesterday to this group, I said, hey, what that number is for us is really indicative of the interest. We're close to 70%. And I think that just translates into, what is really interesting topic, people looking for opportunities in their business. My encouragement and challenge at the same time to the audience is to really embrace not only the idea, but also the notion that there may and will have to be some staff turnover. Internal resistance to this can and will be higher than other solutions. And I think organizations that kind of embrace that notion and understand it are going to be best positioned in the future. There's a really interesting story, and info@IQubedAdvisors.com. I'll send it to you. I read about a month or two ago. It was an organization that basically set 6 to 12 months aside to do all of these things we're talking about in their organization and completely become an AI first kind of company. After 12 months, that business owner fired 90% of his people. He found it was easier to rehire with the skills that they needed than to retrain the people who were resistant to the idea. That's a real dramatic example. I don't see that happening to many organizations in our space, but don't let the internal resistance get in the way. I think Bill said it well, or Justin, get out of the way, let your people do their thing. Really embrace the idea that these are good solutions for your business, but everybody might not love them, and you might have to make some hard decisions as an employer.
Well said. And gentlemen, thank you so much for your extra time here today. We again will send this recording out to everybody who registered, get some clips out there on LinkedIn so everybody can take some good practical tips. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. You'll be able to catch this blog and replay also on IQubedAdvisors.com. We'll see you all next time. Bye now.